first of all, thanks go to all the members of the student teams who worked so hard to make this First Greeks Give Back Challenge a success. Secondly, big thanks go out to all the mentors, which we have a few here today, who worked with the individual student teams on their proposals. I want to thank a few individuals for their outstanding support and leadership in making it possible for student teams from around the country to participate in the finals of the Greeks Give Back Challenge and win grants excuse me, for their service projects. They are excuse me, Dr. Andrew Economos, George and Daphne Hatsopoulos, Jim and Ted Pettis, John Pizakis, William and Constance Vlahoulis, Nick Callis, Peter Poulis, and Michael Zafidopoulos. We want to thank the following organizations who are funding grants to the service projects of the student teams who advanced to the competition semifinals. The Alpha Omega Council, the American Hellenic Institute, the American Hellenic Educational Association, Progressive Association, the American Hellenic Institute, the American Hellenic Bankers Association, the Hellenic American Women's Council, the Hellenic Lawyers Association of New York, the Hellenic Society Prometheus, the Ladies Philoptochos Society, Greek Orthodox Church, excuse me, of St. George in Bethesda, Maryland, and the Pan-Cretan Association of America. And finally, a few added comments. I wanted to thank the Zappis Charitable Foundation, who basically helped us get this God Greek national study going. I want to thank Stephanie Marudis, who was the director, who worked very hard in helping us get this program off the ground. And I especially want to thank, who's here today, Aphrodite Boukidis, who really helped us pull this whole thing together and got it off. We did a lot of work traveling around the country to meet with all of you. And I want to thank all of you and welcome you to the Greeks Give Back Challenge. And I understand that first up will be Georgetown. Thank you.
All right, good morning. Galimera. Thank you, Leon and Bill Schuler, in charge of Hellenext, for putting this great event on, and for all the staff and support, and for the judges for taking the time out of your day to come and be here and to evaluate us strictly and, make sure that we are refining our proposals so that we're doing the utmost that we can to give back to our community. So thank you for dedicating your time. And to all of those that came in support, friends, family, it means a lot to us, and I know it means a lot to the Hellenext generation, and ultimately to the students that we are serving in the community. So I just want to introduce the Georgetown Project. Basically was inspired by, I was reading the Georgetown Law Journal last year, and I'd heard about the Greeks Give Back competition, and I was trying to think of a way of how really could bring together the law school, the other graduate schools of Georgetown University, as well as the undergrads, and really create a program that we could all get behind. And I read about Joshua Kearns, who is a Georgetown Law grad of 2002. And basically Mr. Kearns had this idea. He came to law school, but he really just wanted to revitalize the community and transform the American education system. So with that dream, he created Thurgood Marshall Academy. This building is decades old, and took the money in order to found this public charter high school in order to convert it into the beautiful building it is today, though it still, of course, needs work. And his dream was really to inspire the students to want to succeed, because the vast majority of the students that come in there are reading at 5th, 6th grade reading levels, often 3rd grade. Extremely difficult to get them all caught up and on an even page. So it's an open enrollment school, which means that regardless of your reading level, you're able to enroll in Thurgood Marshall. And it is in Anacostia, DC, which Wards 7 and 8 do have the highest poverty and get the fewest resources from the school department. So for me, it really stood out as a place where I thought it'd be great and see if I could contact them and see if they would let us contribute. And so when I did contact their assistant program directors and offered, I said, we're Hellenic students from Georgetown University. And I also have an organization at the law school that also wants to get involved and help match funds and bring some more non-Greek students over, or non-Orthodox or non-Hellenic students over to volunteer at this school. And they loved it, and they told me about how we can have an entire, basically, Saturday dedicated to a Georgetown effort. And now Kat's going to come up and tell you a little bit more exactly about what we would be doing, but when you come into the school in the morning, we'd walk in, they have a continental breakfast, we sign up, they show us around the school, which is covered with pennants of different universities from all over the country, basically inspiring these students that didn't have as supportive, on the whole, as supportive family structures and didn't instill them with that dream and focus on Hellenic value of education that many of us in this room know so well. And when I was there, I just really thought this was a great place, and one that turns out is actually a feasible opportunity to bring Georgetown students to make a contribution. So now Katerina will tell you a little bit more about the academic enrichment aspect that will be occurring on the Saturdays when we come in to volunteer. And then Andy, who he's going to use the microphone even though he told me that he doesn't use technology on Saturdays. So he's going to tell you about the cultural aspect of what we hope to do at Thurgood Marshall. So, thank you.
One of the important goals we're hoping to get through this project is to see a real academic growth and personal enrichment from these students. So though going to the school as a group and volunteering is both going to cut costs transportation-wise and hopefully foster sort of camaraderie between the Georgetown volunteers, the main strength of our project lies in the one-on-one relationships we hope to get with these students. To cultivate this sort of personal relationship, we plan to make mentoring a large aspect of it, particularly with assisting the students with their portfolios. Thurgood Marshall Academy's unique, rather challenging portfolio assessment requires students to examine their academic achievements and struggles and present their reflections and plans for the future before a panel. The advice and guidance of a university student, especially from a diverse school like Georgetown, will be particularly compelling for the students. As their peers, we can help them through the portfolio project and ask them whatever they may need assistance with, being both role models and giving them the tips and academic skills that we've picked up over the years and really translating that to them.
So finally, we're going to have some cultural enrichment and what do we actually want to do when we go there. So there's about three components that we're looking at. The first one, of course, is everyone's favorite, that's food. The Georgetown Hellenic Society already has relationships with certain restaurants. We do a lot of work with Zorba's Cafe. So our goal is to get some food to bring into these kids and talk about food, because snack time is always a good way to make friends with everyone. And our second big thing is sort of the educational cultural component, and this can vary depending on the class we go into. So Harry, I know, has spoken to an English teacher there. So if we were going into an English class, we could talk about, the epics of Greek poetry or the Odyssey or something along those lines. But Greek culture doesn't just end there. Say we go into a history class, we can go in on a further depth on an event of Greek history that perhaps has only been given a cursory glance, like the Peloponnesian War. And then, of course, we have the ever-important being in DC, which is democracy and civic duty. And so we, if we're with a civics class, or really any class, we can talk about the proud heritage of democracy and participation in any organization in life, whether it's at school or outside of school. And finally, my personal favorite is folk dancing. So we're hoping to get these kids dancing, or at least to see what Greek dancing is. So that's the hope of the three components that we would like to bring in to talk about.
And then just to be clear, so you understand how these work, is basically one Saturday a semester. We think that would be feasible for the students with given their demanding extracurricular and academic schedules in order to come one Saturday a semester, and it would be dedicated to these one-on-one portfolio presentations, preparing them to basically present to a panel of teachers, volunteers, faculty, and people like us could come in and sit on these panels and help work with them. We were going to help them prepare for their portfolio presentation, and then when we can actually sit there and help comment on them. And then at the same time, we're going to go in separate days to the classrooms. I'm not sure how many times to do the Greek culture kind of exhibition, depending on exactly on what each teacher likes. And then just lastly, Thurgood Marshall, why we're looking for grant money is what really struck me when I was there was that they have this alumni emergency fund. And really the crux of it is that when students that, they don't have, often they'll get financial aid, but it might not be enough, and sometimes they just don't have that money to make ends meet, to pay their rent, or to, who knows what comes up, books and things like that. And so their alumni emergency fund is basically, it covers all of those last minute costs that we can't anticipate. And so the school continues to help their students once they go out into college. So thank you so much for your time, and thanks for your consideration. Ready for questions?
Well, then that's whichever working one is. I'll do the one work.
Does one work?
Hello?
Is this working?
Good morning. Thank you so much for your presentation. Could you talk a little bit more about how you will know what the extent to which you've had an impact, let's say on the quality of the portfolios that you'll be working with?
So I think, measuring impact in any sort of, in dynamic environment, such as helping kids learn, is always a challenge. Right now, the Thurgood Marshall Academy, is really improving, but what they're having trouble with is getting their students into the next tier of academic institutions. So our goal, that what we think we can add as Georgetown students, is we've all recently gone through the college application process, and we've all taken everyone's favorite SATs and ACTs. So we believe that what we can add is help them with these tests, or help them understand the different schools that are out there. So I think how we would measure the impact is where, if we start seeing students who can make it into that next tier of institution, or even just hope and strive to make it to that next tier, I think that's how we would think we've made a difference.
Thank you very much.
I actually have a few questions. How many Saturdays a month do you plan on doing, a year do you plan on doing this? And, well, let's start with that one. How many Saturdays a year?
Right, so we think it'd be most feasible at least one time a semester to do the Saturday group, which would include a van of students or two vans from the Georgetown undergraduate campus, which would be about 20 or more, 25 students would come. Then I would drive and get more people to come from the law school, which would probably be another 10, and then some other graduate students, which might be up to 10 as well. So that big group, we would come in on one Saturday and have it to be a Georgetown day of service. My undergraduate put on a day of service the similar way, and we had about 35 volunteers that day. So it includes a tour as well of the school, as well as when the students come in that Saturday morning, they pair us up one by one, and we help them with their portfolio presentation that morning. So we think that would be feasible to do one big Saturday, but then those other, the more cultural exhibits would be depending on how many teachers express interest. And we know there's at least one right now that wants us to come in for her English class and also do the Greek culture exhibit, but that number could multiply.
So the involvement in the actual classwork would be during normal school week?
Yes, it would be on Saturday mornings is when they do it. And
So they have school on Saturdays?
they don't have school on Saturdays, but it's institutionalized to where every Saturday, I'm not sure how many times they have the service day, volunteers will come in on Saturdays, and they let the students know that volunteers are coming in that weekend, and then the students will come in, and then as they come in, we work with them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a question about how you expect the program to sustain after you all graduate.
So I think that's what we think a strong part of our proposal is that we really do see it becoming a Georgetown thing the Clinic Association can get behind, and that every semester we think it's feasible to have this one day where we make it a collaborative, exciting effort for all the students. And the thing is that even if there's always lots of kids from the school that come in for help because they need to get ready for their portfolio presentations, but at the same time, in the worst case scenario that there's not, they still will prep us for the next time we come in and give us more training and things like that. So I think it is sustainable in that regard. And then also, as I was saying with the relief fund, I think that's something we can strive to find resources for and give back to that fund, and ideally find other schools that don't have as great of a infrastructure as Thurgood Marshall has and try to expand those types of ideas. So that's the goal.
Could you briefly address two items, one of which is what's your experience with whether the students at Thurgood Marshall are going to turnout for the events, especially your type of event? And also, second one is the ratio of cultural to academic. You spoke about the academic failings at the school or needs at the school versus cultural. It's unclear to me whether or not given one weekend a month or one weekend a semester or whatever, that you could possibly do both and how you might divide that up between them.
Could you clarify what you mean by do both? You meant?
Well, you spoke about both academic assistance and cultural.
Sure. Well, so as far as the impact, so about when I went for my undergraduate, we had a day of service at Thurgood Marshall. About, I think it was like a little bit over 20 students came, and they said that was a very low number, and they were upset that we had about 30 volunteers from my undergraduate come, and they thought that that number was low. So I think their average is about 30, and they seemed that it was low. So, I mean, I think it would be great if we could get 30 students from Georgetown across the different schools to come on a Saturday morning and dedicate 3 hours to working with these students. So, and then I think the worst case scenario, we'd have 20, like I said, was a low day. And I still think that makes an impact. And then the other good thing about the project is that so there is that minimal time commitment aspect that a lot of students can get behind and have 30 kids there. But at the same time, if you want to get more involved, like I'm going to be a long-term mentor to someone. And then I could also go on multiple Saturdays a month. So, and also Professor Minnie Lamb from Georgetown brought it to my attention that you can also get 1 credit through Georgetown University if you do a certain number of volunteer hours in programs like this. So if the students want that greater responsibility, they can.
I'm sorry, Mr. Director, we have
Sure.
to conclude. Go on to the next
Perfect.
one.
Okay, perfect.
Will the Harvard team come up next, please?
Big hand for Harvard.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for inviting us to come here. It's really been a pleasure so far, and we're looking forward to a great weekend. Just by way of introduction, my name is Georgia Stasinopoulos, and I represent the Small Claims Advisory Service at Harvard University. We're a legal outreach and volunteer service partnering with the Hellenic Society on campus.
Good morning or early afternoon, everybody. My name is Katerina Gloptis, and I'm the current president of the Harvard Hellenic Society.
And good morning, Kalimera Sas. I'm Paul Stavropoulos, and I am the former president of the Harvard College Hellenic Society.
So just by way of explaining how it is that we got involved in this particular proposal, the Small Claims Advisory Service had been around since 1973, and it was our job to educate Boston residents in the area about what it is that they can do in small claims court, which is a small administrative court in Boston, in the city of Boston, that allows residents to file claims without having legal representation, i.e. they represent themselves. But what we really wanted to do is go into new communities and find new clients that we could work with that really needed our services.
And on the flip side, we are an organization that really in the last year has rejuvenated and redefined what we do on campus to provide a real presence of Greekness and Greek Americans on campus. But we're starting to also look beyond that, and we really wanted to try and find a way to kind of get out of the proverbial Harvard bubble and have a positive effect on the community.
I think what Paul is trying to say is that 3 years ago, the Hellenic Society was not very active or very, very present on campus. We used to say Hellenic Society, and everybody assumed we were talking about frats or sororities, and even that is a huge statement on our campus.
I think one of the most interesting things about our two organizations is that we seem so different, but in reality our initiatives and goals were the same. A year ago, we both wanted to take on a sustained, ambitious public service initiative, but we didn't have the money or the community to do it. Enter Hellenics. They reached out to us a year ago, and we sat down and figured out our proposal that combines two aspects that are really important to us. The first is a mentorship program for high school students where we bring in Hellenic students to learn more about Greek life on campus, in this case Hellenic life on campus, but also a legal outreach program that builds on a program that SCAS has been trying to expand but hasn't been successful in doing. The Roadshows Initiative, which is explained in the sheet of paper in front of you, where we go into communities and speak more about what access people have to small claims court in Boston.
Now, if we can take a kind of high-level overview of what our proposal entails. A, we want to provide legal information that helps low and middle-income communities navigate the small court claims process. B, we want to assist the communities by identifying Hellenic partners. That is, the Greek community tends to congregate around a church, a Hellenic society, Sunday school, things of that sort. And C, we want to emphasize the value of education and the power of public service. And this really entails that we're taking two groups that are on different realms of the campus, but we're trying to take together this collective power, this collective brain power, and really amplify the impact that we want to have. Not only that, but we want to somehow find a way to bridge the gap of the generations of Greeks that there are. That is, the mentees, the high schoolers, the collegiate Greeks, and our mentors that Hellenics has put us in contact with, as well as those that we've been trying to work with in those communities.
So to execute this proposal, we've laid out a timeline, if you will, for the next year or so. So right now, what we're working on is launching our mentorship application so that high school students can apply to come to the visiting program that we want to start sponsoring. At the same time, we're going to be going through and laying the foundation for the roadshows that we're going to be executing over the next year. So finalizing the budget and then reaching out to all the key players who are going to help us make those roadshows possible next year. When we all come back from winter break in January, we're going to start going through all of the applications and then choose which mentees will be coming to Harvard and spending the weekend with us. At the same time, this is really when we're going to go through and pinpoint which of the cities that we've already identified we're going to be using. So these cities were chosen in, these cities were chosen with the help of our advisors from Hellenics. So we went through and found cities that have a large Greek community, but also have other diverse communities that could really impact from the SCAS model. And then finally in the spring, we're going to execute all of the roadshows. So the high schoolers will be coming to spend the weekend with us, and then we're going to be doing at least 3 to 4 roadshows. We're hoping to get 50 attendees to each one.
Now you're all professionals, I know you want to know the numbers. Why Harvard, why Hellenics, why this money, and why now? Ultimately, we're looking to implement 3 roadshows over the course of 1 year and bring in 2 to 4 high school students. What that means is that we need $975 to do that, and that's the minimum. If we want to make this a national impact with a national initiative and bring in students from the West Coast, we need more money, something like $1,200 to $1,300. We've been very careful about getting fundraising from Harvard, but unfortunately there are limitations about how we both spend money that comes from Harvard. Originally, SCAS has money, but we would have to spend 67% of our yearly budget just to make these roadshows that we've already been trying to implement an ambitious reality. And on the Hellenic Student Association end, they're limited in how they spend their money because undergraduate money can only be used to help undergraduates, which seems a little bit selfish of Harvard, which is why we reached out to Hellenics originally. Not that we would call our alma mater selfish, but selfish is as selfish does. And this is really what we want to do, and this is something that we need Hellenics for. Not just for the money, not just for the grant, but for access to the wonderful mentors that we've already worked with, cultural and legal mentors who really can make our projects sustainable in the long term, well after we graduate. And beyond just that, making sure that we have a real identifiable impact in the communities that all 3 of us in both organizations very truly care about. So with that, I believe we're out of time. We're looking forward to your questions and your feedback, and thank you so much for inviting us to attend.
Who do you see as the partners in the broader Greek American community that would be most effective in helping promote what you want to do?
This is something that I think we talked about a little bit with our mentors, Catherine Triandafilou and Mr. Alex Geordas. Both are attorneys in the greater Boston area. And what they identified for us is three partners that we should be working with. First, Greek radio and television, so that we could get the word out and maybe answer calls on radio and television. They're very well connected, and this is why we're so glad we got to work with Hellenics, because this isn't something we could have dreamed of doing before. Second, Greek cultural communities, and this is something that both Katerina and Paul are really invested in. If I were to walk in with 15 SCAS members and say, I'm here to teach you Greeks about the small claims court, they would laugh me out of the room and call me an Amerikanaki. I can't do that, and that's why we wanted to work with cultural groups. And finally, we want to work with legal professionals like the mentors we've worked with, so that they could help us with lectures and training, and just make sure that the training that we all undergo is good and helps residents in the way we need to help them.
And expanding a little bit on that, it's great that there's such a centralized meeting place naturally that Greeks and Greeks Americans get around. That is the church that we mentioned, or other, say, Greek American leagues, for example. There are Greek basketball leagues that exist. They're all kind of feed off the same paths and avenues, and those are great ways for us to go ahead and facilitate in that process as well. Thank you.
The funding you put up there was not overwhelming. Have you had success actually approaching law firms and other organizations to pony up some amount of funding so far, and what has that been?
I can talk a little bit about what it looks like on the SCAS side. So SCAS has had sort of a spotty record of getting funding. One law firm will sit down and give us $2,000, and then for a year, no other law firm will give us anything. I would say right now, between the two groups, we're looking at something like $1,200 in fundraising from SCAS alone. And then on the Hellenic side, I know that they've been really successful and gotten something like $1,900, which is really impressive considering they've only been around, really a strong presence on campus for 3 years. So what we really want to do once we get this funding is to go to law firms in the area and say, sponsor a roadshow in your community, give us $100 or $200. It's really chump change for a law firm, but it makes such an impact on the residents we want to help.
And kind of building on that from the non-monetary aspect, one thing that we did mention was the radio and television avenue that Mr. Yoder actually offered to host us if we were able to successfully get the money to do this endeavor. So there's a whole ton of resources that you guys have that we would love to be able to use to carry out this project that we propose.
Good morning. Can you talk a little bit about how you'll measure success?
Yes, definitely. So the SCAS model, I guess I'm a sort of interesting case. I'm part of the Hellenic Society, and I'm really, really invested in the Hellenic Society, and then George is part of SCAS. Last fall, I randomly started training for the SCAS because it sounded interesting, and little did I know that a year later, the three of us would be sitting here with one from one end, one from the other end, and me somewhere in the middle with affiliations in both. So I guess I have the experience to say that SCAS is a very established and good program that's looking to expand in other ways. So what it currently does is people call in to the office that's based in Cambridge, and there's always undergraduate staffing. So we pick up the phone and someone says, this is my problem, this is what I need help with, and then we give them small claims information so they can know how to navigate the process. The thing that SCAS has not previously been able to do because of funding and other things is take that out into the community. And that's where this all comes into place, because we know that a lot of Greeks will not come say, hi, I need help. So we have to come to them and say, we are here to help. Let us help. We're Greeks and Greek students who want to give you this information. So what SCAS does is they give surveys at the end of these roadshows to basically find out what are the most helpful parts of the program and then what should be changed before the next one. And since we're proposing to do 3 to 4 of them, and we've done a couple in the past, there is definitely room to improve from one to the next as we learn what works.
The $975 is the cost of a mentor going out into the community to educate, correct?
It's the cost of 3 roadshows and 4 high school students coming to Harvard for a weekend.
But that includes the cost per student of coming to Harvard, room and board?
It does. If we're recruiting only from the East Coast, naturally. If we start flying students out from California, I think we're going to have to expand. And that was the range I gave, up to $1,300.
And that also includes an estimate between 2 through 4 number of mentees that we would bring on as well.
Time for one quick question. Can you explain the nexus of the high school mentorship program and the legal outreach?
Of course. So the idea behind legal outreach originally is this is something SCAS has been doing since the 1970s. But a lot of things that I sort of ran across as a pre-law student at Harvard is that there are very few legal opportunities. And SCAS is unique. We go in and represent clients in small claims court. We translate for them. We answer questions. We can't give legal advice, obviously. I would have to do much better on my LSATs to do that. But we can offer legal information. And sometimes that's really all you need. We want to expose high school students to those opportunities early and tell them that they're really interested in public service. It's not this amorphous community goal. It has tangible impacts, not only on what they want to do for residents, but also what they want to do for life. I want to be a lawyer, and SCAS is directly related to that. And I know that Katerina and Paul feel the same about what SCAS and Hellenic students have to offer.
And if I could add to that, actually,
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.